In this episode, we'll be talking about how to avoid the overwhelm of creating an online course.
Welcome to the Online Course Coach podcast, brought to you by TrueFocusMedia.com. Whether you're a beginner or expert, this is the podcast for the latest in online course creation tips, news, interviews, and ideas. And here's your coach, Jeff Long.
Welcome back to another episode of the Online Course Coach podcast. Obviously, my name is Jeff Long, and this is the podcast that the announcer, which oddly enough is my wife. I don't know if I've told many people about that. She has done different voiceover work throughout the years. And so, why not have my wife, whom I love and just means the world to me, introduce this podcast? So that's a little Easter egg, a little bonus tip for those of you that are either new to the podcast or if I haven't mentioned that recently. So a little background tip, a little fun thing there. So my background and expertise is creating and marketing online courses, but my specialty within that is helping people create effective online course videos. And I'm also pretty talented at seeing ways to leverage the power of courses and technology to better teach and market and sell. And I've done that with a lot of big companies as well as online influencers. But that's a topic for another day. Today, I want to talk about how to avoid the overwhelm of creating an online course. And the reason I want to talk about this is I've just been coaching a lot of people lately. And as I look back, and this is one thing that is a big hurdle, a big roadblock, a big barrier that people can't get over, or it's hard to get over. And so, it's easy to get overwhelmed with all the details, right? There's not just the idea, the concept, the outline, what you're going to teach. There's also the technology. If you're going to make videos, how do you do that? If you're going to be on camera, besides maybe feeling awkward on camera, how do you even get good audio, good lighting, good video to make that happen? And then once that's done, where do you put this course? Do you build it yourself on a website? And if you do, how in the world do you do that? Or do you do a software as a service like Teachable or Thinkific or Rizuku or some of the other people that I've interviewed on this podcast? So there are a lot of technical hurdles. And then once you create the course, how do you market the course? How do you get students in? How do you build this into something that is an influence to others and an income generator for you? So it's easy to get overwhelmed when we hear about, course creators that make it big. And isn't it sometimes frustrating? You're like, man, how can they do it? And maybe I can't put those pieces together. Well, let's talk about that because, I find that can be a big hurdle for a lot of people. Well, a lot of times these big, successful course creators, they might not talk about the team of people that it took to create and market that course. So they might have a team around them, people to brainstorm the idea. They might have an audience that they can pick from and pick people to give feedback on that idea. They might have, a videographer or video crew that they can hire. They have maybe marketers and Facebook ad specialists and developers and designers. They have everything. How do you even stand a chance? Well, keep in mind, at one point, those people weren't big names at all. Seth Godin talks about, hey, a decade or more ago, I wasn't Seth Godin. The Seth Godin that everybody loves, he wasn't a big name. And so we all start from that point of not having a large audience. I love the quote. I first heard it from John Acuff. I don't know it's from him, but it's something like, I'm going to butcher this quote. It's something like, don't compare somebody else's highlight reel to your daily struggle. So when you look at, somebody that wins the Super Bowl, well, you see them celebrating on stage, but you don't see the daily work, the daily grind that they put in, the hours of effort and sweat and blood and tears that they put in. You don't see that. So yes, when you look at these big course creators, you might just see the tip of the iceberg, that success. You don't see what's below that, the hard work, the struggles, the failures, and the team that they have in place. I've talked about it myself. One of my first courses, man, when was this? Probably 8 to 10 years ago, I'm guessing. I spent hours and months creating this course, and I went to release it, and nobody bought it, and I was devastated. It was embarrassing. I felt like I wasted my time. I felt like, I knew the content was phenomenal, but I just didn't do it right. And we're going to talk about this here in a minute, but and thankfully I was able to turn that around and do some joint ventures and partner with people and turn it into a good income. I was able to steer that ship in the right direction to make it successful. And I want to talk to you about that today. So, what are your goals for your course? Let's start at the beginning, because a lot of people, they have big hopes and dreams. They want to make a lot of money. They want to sell a lot of courses. But what are your main goals? And think about that, because it's easy to think, oh man, I didn't sell hundreds of these courses. I just sold 5 or 2 or 10 or whatever that is. But what is your goal? And I think it should start with how you can serve your students. And how can you even serve a small amount of students? And we'll come back to that in a minute. So keep your goals in mind. Is it only money, or is it impact? Is it to grow an audience? Is it to serve more people? What is that one thing that you want to have your course do? Or what are some of the goals? A book that I recommend is called The One Thing by Gary Keller. And he talks about how to focus on that one thing. And sometimes with your course, it might seem like there are a million things that you're distracted with, discouraged with. But what are some of the one things, or what is the one thing that you can focus on? So it's okay if you only sell one course when you release it. Sometimes we get caught up in this launch. We've got to launch our course. We've got to do this launch, this thing, that Jeff Walker talks about, or these other people talk about. I don't know that we need to think about our courses in terms of launches. I've been trying to think of a good word. I don't know if it's releases. I don't know if it's, just putting it out there in the wild. But think of your course. Think of it as the first round of your first version of the course, and just take that pressure off. This doesn't have to be the final version of your course. This is the ugly version. A couple years ago, I did a video for a very well-known sculptor and artist, and he had done these sculptures of Truett Cathy of Chick-fil-A and Arnold Schwarzenegger and a lot of famous people you've probably heard of. And so I was with my friend Dan Miller at his place in Franklin, Tennessee, and this sculptor was down there making an eagle. And Dan loves eagles. That's kind of his whole, I don't know, his one of his favorite animals, if not his favorite animal. In fact, I have in my office, I have a copy of this very same eagle. It's amazing. One of my kind of prized possessions in my office. And this sculptor was saying, hey, when he started out, it was just an ugly lump of clay. And this took him, I think it was a day and a half or 2 full days, maybe it was even 3 days, of molding this clay into this amazing eagle. Well, guess what? It didn't look like an amazing eagle the first day or even the second day. In fact, the first day it looked like an ugly chicken. And it really did. It looked like an ugly chicken. I'll put a link to the video in the show notes of this podcast. And it looked ugly. And he said some things that were hugely impactful to me. He said, but I kept going because I trusted my creativity. I trusted my experience. I trusted that this ugly chicken would turn into a soaring eagle, because this artist, this sculptor, had done this so many times. So you need to trust that maybe your course right now looks like an ugly chicken. Maybe it doesn't fly. It doesn't do anything. You hate it. I've had projects where at the beginning I'm like, what is this? This is the worst thing I've ever done. And as I work on it, as I refine it, it gets better. Now we'll talk about that here in a minute as well. But it's okay if you only sell one course when you release it. Think of it as, like I said, the first round of the first version of the course. So it might look like an ugly chicken, and that's okay. as long as it does what you need it to do, which is teach the content effectively. So, what are some ways you can do that? I can't stress the importance enough of finding 10 or 20 people that will go with you on your journey as you build the course. So, you don't have to have the course built out before you pre-sell it to these people. And I do recommend you sell it. I was just talking to somebody last week who they did this kind of I don't know if you want to call it a beta test, a VIP group, whatever you want to call it, but she didn't charge for it. And she said, that was one of my bigger mistakes because they didn't have any skin in the game. So when I asked them how to refine the course, they didn't give me very good feedback. So make sure you find, it could be 5 people, it could be 10. The number doesn't really matter. You just want enough people that they can give you feedback. And what's in it for them is, and let's say they pay $50. What's in it for them is you are creating a custom course just for them, just for their needs, just to answer the questions and problems they have. So how cool it is for them that they get to be a part of this, right? They are not just getting a course that, is for anybody. They are getting a course that it's just for them. So as you build it, you're asking questions. You're saying, hey, I'm thinking of approaching, lesson 1 in this way. What do you think? Would that help you? And even before that, you're going to ask them, what are the top, 3 to 5 problems you have in this area on this topic? And what struggles do you have? What's holding you back? What's stopping you? And you can create the course just for them. And then once you create, lesson 1, you give it to them and you ask for their feedback. And it's up to you. I wouldn't necessarily keep refining that same lesson 1 over and over and over. You might just refine it once, but then go to lesson 2 and ask for their feedback. Lesson 3, lesson 4, all the way through. And I find one thing that keeps a lot of people from releasing their course, and it's fear, right? Fear will keep you from releasing your course. You'll just waste time perfecting it. So that's where I say, even if you get this feedback, you might not even want to act on it until version 2 of the course, when you re-release it to a new audience. Because I would rather you spend, let's say, 30 hours on your course and release your course, and maybe you only sell it to 10 people. Okay, so if you would have spent 100 hours perfecting your course and your lessons and your content and your graphics and your videos and all that stuff, would you have had much better of a result? Would you have a 2x, 5x, 10x better result because you spent 100 hours on it? Usually no. So I would rather you spend a minimal amount of hours, and that's where going to this beta group, this VIP group, is hugely helpful because you're not wasting your time. And for better or for worse, people won't know the content or quality of your course until they take it. So if you're wasting a lot of time perfecting that PDF or editing that video, it might not actually help you sell the course better. Now, let me get this straight. I'm not saying, I don't mean to make a low quality course at all. That I would never recommend that. But will your students notice if you spend 3 hours, perfecting the font on a PDF download that you have, right? Will they notice if you edit out every single mistake in your video, every or whatever that is? So instead of taking 10 hours to edit a video, what if it took you 2 hours? What will give you the most value to the student? And focus on that. Don't focus on those little things that bug and annoy you. And listen, I'm a creative person. My background is in this. I struggle with this myself. So I'm not necessarily talking to you as you listen to this. I'm also talking to myself. So focus on the value that the course content provides, not the little things that make it pretty, because it's easy to get caught in the mental trap of, hey, if I make this perfect, then it will sell better. But I really think it's your brain protecting yourself, thinking, if I keep working on this, I won't have to sell it, and I'll never know if it succeeds or fails. So again, I would rather you spend 30 hours and release your course than spend 100 hours and probably have the same results. So look at the long term. Again, the first version of your course is just the first version. So don't put a lot of pressure on yourself. Don't stress out about perfecting it, because you'll update and improve your course, but it won't do any good if you don't release your course, right? So, what's the point if you keep perfecting and perfecting and perfecting, but you never release it? You never get any students. You never get any buyers. You never make any money because you're caught in that fear cycle of, oh man, if I do release this and it doesn't do well, then I'm going to feel like a failure. Well, the first time you release it, it might not do well, and that's okay. That's my whole point. Is don't get overwhelmed both with the technology side as well as with the sales side. And we'll talk about the sales and marketing here in a minute. So when I was a little kid, and I've told this story before, when I was a little kid, I think I was in junior high, I came home from school and I was overwhelmed. My dad could see it. My mom could see it. So my dad asked me, Jeff, what's wrong? I said, I have all these tests. I have quizzes. I have homework. I have reading. I have to memorize this. Then I have sports. Then I have this. Then I have that. I think I had at least a job back then. It seems like I always had a paper route or something I was selling or working at some point. And my dad said, all right, Jeff, just let's take a break here. Go out into the yard, pick up a big pile of sticks and bring it in. And I was probably thinking, what in the world? Dad has lost his mind, which is a junior higher you normally think because you think you're really awesome, but you're definitely not. So I go into the backyard, I get a pile of sticks, I bring it inside, and probably was thinking, we don't even have a fireplace inside. Why is Dad having me bring sticks inside? And I was probably also thinking, good thing Mom doesn't know about this. She probably would have told us to go outside. But anyway, so my dad said, all right, Jeff, try to break that big pile of sticks. And so with all my might, I twisted and bent and tried to break those sticks in half, but I couldn't do it. And so my dad said, all right, Jeff, take one stick and break it. And so with all my manly might, I snapped that stick with no problem. And then he said, hey, grab another stick and break it. And I did. And I grabbed another and another, and I broke them and broke them and broke them. And before I knew it, that whole pile of sticks was broken because I did it one stick at a time. So how do we apply that to your course? Well, what do you need to do? What's the one thing you need to do today to move on that project? I do something called the 5-minute journal. And each day it talks about, what are the, 3 things I need to accomplish this day. And I have customized it. So it has, what are some of the things I'm learning in my quiet time, or what are the things I'm learning that I want to do with my family. And one of those things I have on my 5-minute journal is, what's one thing I need to do today to move forward in my course, in my business, in my podcast, some of these things that I have long-term goals of. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's whatever it is. And so what's one thing you can do today to move your course forward? Maybe it's finding those 10 people that you can pre-sell your course to, and they can walk through it with you. And then be thinking, what do you need to do that no one else can do on your course? Okay, so let's think about this. What are some things that only you can do to your course? Well, maybe it's only you can be on the video. If you're promoting yourself and your knowledge, then hey, just you can be on your video. Well, what do you need to do, or what could you do to outsource? And think of that as an investment. So maybe it's graphics. Maybe it's creating a really attractive PDF. Maybe it's video editing. Maybe it's creating the learning management system, on your website. So what can you outsource to somebody else? And then think of, what do you need to simplify? Again, we've talked about this. You don't need your course to contain all your knowledge and experience you've accumulated over the years and decades, right? Think about, what are the most important things that your students need to know first. And then that's what your course should be on. Think of it like a college level topic. What's a 101, 201, 301, 401 version of the course? You don't need to have, a senior level course for beginners. Just create a beginner level course for beginners. And that might free some of you up that are intimidated because you think, I don't have all the knowledge that a senior level course would provide. Well, what's that freshman level course you can provide, that beginner level course? and work up from there. Because really, all you need to know is a little bit more than your students. And think of it, in my business, there are people that know a lot more than me. And sure, that can be intimidating, but I know that I have um, a lot of experience and expertise, more so than many other people. And so that's all that business is. That's all that teaching is and serving is finding out what you are better than, just a little bit better than your students. Not better than, that's maybe not the right word, but more knowledgeable about than your students. So again, what do you need to simplify in your course? What are the most important things your students need to know? Take that and break it down into your course. And then even before you take your course, maybe you don't have 10, 20 people that you could have walk through your course. Well, maybe you need to market your course. So what if you created a mini course first to grow your email list, and then you could offer that course to those initial people? So maybe you take the top 3 things in your course and you create a simple mini course on that topic. You offer it on your website. They put in their name and email. Maybe it's tied to ConvertKit. Maybe it's tied to MailChimp or to lead pages and your website, and they put their name and email, they get tagged, and then you can approach them and say, hey, I'm thinking about creating this course. What do you think? So simplify, take one stick at a time and break it. Now, if technology is a big hang up, and it can be, I fully understand that it can be overwhelming. Well, what in your technology can you do yourself and what can you outsource? So, like, for example, me and my team, whether it's me coaching you or others how to do the technology side, whether it's me and my team building the website out or the videos or the content, or maybe it's, somebody local that that you can have come to your house, shoot the videos if you don't want to do it yourself. So if the tech side of things is overwhelming, check out my tech guide for online course creators at onlinecoursecoach.com/tech. And you can download that. There's the show notes for this page or this podcast, excuse me. And then what's a niche that you can serve? I was just talking to somebody last week. They were talking about piano lessons and saying, there's so many people I could teach if I went really broad. But we talked about it, and she had a good market in her church, in her circle of influence, and we talked about what if we just started there. So sometimes you might need to niche down or make a course specifically for people and their audiences. And this is one of the things I did for my very first online courses 8 or 10 years ago. So it used to be that WordPress, which is how you build a website with one of the most popular website builders out there, it was impossible to find tutorials out there. Now you can go to YouTube. You can, probably within 3 clicks, you'll find a really good WordPress tutorial. And I knew that that was going to increase and more people were going to be teaching WordPress. Well, what I did was I created specific online courses for different industries. So one of them was, hey, if you're a public speaker, here's how to create your own WordPress website. If you're a coach or consultant, here's how to create your own WordPress website. And I did different niches or genres, and that worked out very well because I was able to serve a specific audience. So who can you serve that is within a specific audience? Find out where they are and even serve them, So if your audience is on Facebook and there's these Facebook groups, go in there, offer tips, answer questions, provide articles, and not just your own articles, but other people's articles. I have seen people grow and build their impact, build their influence, and build their email list, their income, all because they offered help in these groups. And then who can you connect with to serve? Maybe it's online influencers. Maybe it's podcasters. Maybe it's people in your town. Maybe it's, different communities online. Maybe it's like if you're a realtor, maybe it's different real estate associations in your town, in your city, across the country. Find out who they are and serve them, and then they might promote you. I've seen that time and again where you just go and you just offer a lot of value. And this isn't a one-time thing. This might take weeks. This might take months. But think about it. Would you rather serve influencers that have large audiences, even if it's in the hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, whatever that is? Would you rather do that? Or would you rather try to sell one course at a time, keep struggling, not really have a plan? No, it makes sense to connect with online influencers. And then along with that, who are the people that you can leverage for maximum results? So maybe after you've launched your initial course to your initial students, maybe you go to different influencers and do a joint venture or a partnership with. Maybe you find people that have courses that are in a parallel industry. So, if you're a holistic person that eats holistically, maybe you want to partner with um, a veterinary, a vet that has courses that will help your animals. Similar people. If people are holistic minded with their food, with their lifestyle, they're probably going to be that with their pets. So who can you reach out to that are in the similar industry, similar interest that you can really leverage? So I know we've talked about a lot today. It is easy to get overwhelmed. So like I said, I'll kind of recap here. Don't look at the huge gurus that, have, thousands of followers and they send out one email and make, $10,000 or more, because they have a huge team around them and they weren't big at one point. You got to start today. So think of ways that you can maybe even focus your course, make a beginner level course, or maybe it's finding things that only you can do and outsourcing the rest. Maybe it's not being so overwhelmed with the tech stuff and just getting that course out there to to 10 or 20 people and finding out what they truly want. Maybe they just want more access to you. Maybe it's not this glamorous course that has all these lessons and videos and all this stuff. Maybe it's a little bit of that, but maybe it's group coaching along with that. So you could use a tool like Zoom, Zoom, to do group coaching, almost like live webinars. So think of creative ways that will give the most value, ideally that you can replicate easily. Group coaching, there's only so many you can give, but there are ways to scale that. And then if you get overwhelmed by the technology side, go to onlinecoursecoach.com/tech and download the resources, my top tech tips as far as cameras and audio and lighting and where to host your course videos and a lot of different things like that. And keep focusing on what your goals are. Is it to serve your audience, to grow your audience, to teach more students? What are those things, and focus on that? And then lastly, just realize that in your course, it's going to be improved over time. So keep improving it, but keep marketing it. Sometimes it's the marketing that needs the most help. If you do have trouble with marketing or any of these topics, you can go to onlinecoursecoach.com. You can go to the videos tab. You can go to the podcast tab. And there are topics and podcasts and videos about marketing, about creation, about building your learning management system. So go to those. It would be hard for me to go and talk about all the resources I've created over the months. But go and find those. Maybe I'll put a couple more in the podcast show notes at onlinecoursecoach.com/tech. I'll also, that's a redirect to the show notes. I'll also put several other bonuses in there, other guides and resources, because I know it can be overwhelming. But you know what? You're in good company. Keep listening to this podcast. Keep coming back for more. Keep sending in those questions. You can send them, Jeff, at onlinecoursecoach.com. Let me know what questions you have. I'd be happy to answer them on the show. And keep teaching and training, because it's really my goal to help you to teach many, to impact millions.